I could do this. So we lost a member of our family this morning. Bernard Hill passed, King Theoden, and so we just want to take a moment before we walk off the stage to honor him. He was supposed to be here. He was supposed to be here today and yesterday. So we love him. He was intrepid. He's funny. He's gruff. He's irascible. He was beautiful.
We just we were watching it actually, I think, and we were talking about the movies, and I said to Dom, I don't think anyone spoke Tolkien's words as great as Bernard did. I think the way he grounded those words into a realism that he would break my heart when I saw him on the screen. He was a wonderful man, and he'll be sorely missed.
So that is for anyone that didn't know, a great man has left this earthly plane and passed on. Bernard Hill, who of course embodied King Theoden, Theoden King. To sort of just continue off of what they said, I think of all of the actors that were around his age at the time Lord of the Rings came out. I honestly do not think I could come up with an actor who has as much could have embodied Theoden King better than Bernard Hill. It's so devastating that he's passed. It's just such a sad day.
And it's and it's funny because, well, it's not necessarily funny, but it is interesting when you hear the words and you actually read Tolkien's words. And one of Bernard's quotes in the film and actually in the book is, "I go to my fathers, and even in their mighty company, I shall not now be ashamed."
Yes.
Those are Tolkien's words that Peter Jackson put into the films. And so that scene really hits differently now when you watch it, because he truly, like you said, he embodies those words. And as the four hobbits spoke about it, they even said that it's grounded in a verisimilitude where it's not King Theoden of Middle Earth. It's King Theoden of potentially a time that may have happened that it's like a documentary, like you're watching history.
Absolutely.
Because he feels like the noble leader, the warrior, the king that you hear of in medieval times,
Yes.
So, and he just absolutely nailed the performance. And what's interesting, I read something today that said that that he is one of the only actors who was in 2 films that won over 11 Academy Awards: Lord of the Rings and Titanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, to me, I mean, if that's all he did in his career, which he did many other roles, but if those were the only 2 things he did in his career that won 11 Academy Awards between the 2 films or for each film, that is incredible. And his reputation precedes him, right? And so yeah, it's tough to know that we lost him so soon as well, because 79, you go, man, that seems. You look at Will Shatner, you look at the Shat, and he's in his late 90s.
Yeah, he's
still doing great.
Yeah, and I'm just I don't know. It's just a lot. Like, I guess part of the thing too is, so I saw Indiana Jones and Star Wars when I was really young. And Harrison Ford is one of my very first on-screen crushes. Like, I loved Han Solo. I loved Indiana Jones. I was like, God, he's so cool. He's so capable. He's awesome. But I had only seen him in those movies. And so when I saw him like in real life, I was confused. I was like, why is he so old? Like, he's so young in these movies. Like I don't understand. Didn't they just make this movie? And it turns out like, oh no, this movie was made like 13 years before I was born.
Yeah.
And so 12 or 13 years. And I was like, wow, it's amazing to think of that. And like that much time had passed before I was even born. And then you figure I was probably 9 the first time I watched Indiana Jones and Star Wars. So we're talking 2 decades since the first Star Wars movie, and almost the exact same, and almost 2 decades since Indiana Jones. And you're just like, woo. Like it doesn't seem like a lot of, like 20 years is really, it's both like really short and also a lot of time. Like it's a lot of time to accomplish something, but it's such a short, like because if someone passes away at 20, you're like, oh my God, they were just a kid.
Yeah.
Like,
and yeah, it's 2 decades. When you look at 2004 and now you look at 2024, 2004 feels like the 90s.
Yeah.
Like it feels like 2004, the last, actually, no, that was the year after The Return of the King was released. So we have lived, 2 decades of, of our adult lives, being able to enjoy these films. Now, you brought up Star Wars. I would argue, but then again, I'm biased, so chat, don't kill me. But because I grew up with Lord of the Rings, that was my Star Wars, right? Whereas like you talk to Frank Gore, his nostalgia, his childhood, his film franchise would most likely be Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I would argue, after watching Lord of the Rings and after seeing that clip of the Battle of Pelennor Fields, the Ride of the Rohirrim, the epic scale of the Return of the King, I would argue that the Lord of the Rings has more moments within the trilogy that are long-lasting, that are evergreen, that are timeless than Star Wars. And I know that's going to get me in heat. I know that people are going to kill me. No, okay, all right, then but like just taking King Theoden's scenes, we have the last blow of the Hornburg at Helm's Deep. We have Ride Out With Me with Aragorn. We have the beacons are lit and Gondor and Rohan will answer. Like every single line he says,
just like everything. And he's like, when he's talking about, he's like, these they cover the graves of my forefathers, and now they'll cover the grave of my son. No child should have to bury, no parent should have to bury their child. And you're just like, it hurts. It hurts so much. It's so true too. But like just everything, he really, you weren't on that stream with me, but I've talked about this before with other people, and they were like, if you pulled all the members of the Fellowship out, they're like, and you had to choose a character who, if that character were changed or was removed, sort of like what they did with Glorfindel, like what character that wasn't part of the Fellowship directly would have absolutely meant the essentially destruction of the cohesiveness and like just the overall storytelling, like the epicness of it. And almost everybody, if I'm remembering the live stream correctly, a few people said Gollum for obvious reasons.
Right.
Like Gollum. A few people said I think Miss Martin Muse was on there, and I'm pretty sure she said Faramir.
Okay.
And then a few people said Elrond, and a few people said Arwen and Eowyn. And so like then it cut to me, and I was like, guys, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to knock and see, now I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm not trying to knock Eowyn and Faramir's like how they found each other, and because in the books, obviously, it's much more. We don't see it a lot in the films, but in the books, it's actually one of. It's a really good love story in the books, but that's what it's a love story, not a lust story. So let's not get those confused. Same thing with Aragorn and Éomer, like not Éomer, that's her brother. Oh my god, I didn't just do that. Arwen, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Éomer's picture. Anyway, and Arwen, like that is a love story throughout that's throughout the books. And yes, it's crucial, and she gives him hope and a purpose, and it's supposed to be. Now, obviously, Tolkien is not a fan of allegory, but he likes applicability. You can definitely remember what Tolkien went through. He's a veteran of World War I. He had children and family in World War II. So it's highly applicable to see like Aragorn thinking of Arwen like as one of those World War I soldiers who was riding home to their like the whole reason that they survived. They were like, God, just get me through this so I can go see her one more time. Like that whole thing. And it's a beautiful story. And yes, she's very integral with Aragorn and everything like that. But when it got down to it, I was like, there's no way. There's no one else, and there's no way you could have told this story without Theoden King. You simply just you simply couldn't have. There is no substitute for Theoden King. I'm still really upset that Glorfindel, like, again, love Arwen, but like I really wanted to see Glorfindel.
Yeah. And I think you said Elrond. I would, Elrond has a major part in this to play because he essentially creates the fellowship. But if we're talking maybe like post-fellowship and on, like who they meet afterwards, whether it's Faramir, whether it's, like you said, King Theoden, whether it's, Smeagol or Gollum, any one of these could be argued for being the most important. And I would probably go, yeah, you're right. But to your point of King Theoden, who was it that Saruman tried to poison his mind? It was Theoden, not because he just wanted more power or more lands, because Saruman and Sauron knew that the only thing, or one of the main things standing in their way from complete domination of Middle-earth was Theoden King, the man that was going to destroy and thwart their whole evil plan was going to be Theoden and the Rohirrim, which is why they tried to ravage their lands and their women and their riders and take away their king, because they knew that it would demoralize them, and without their king, they can't effectively fight back. So it says a lot about King Theoden that Saruman and Sauron would have Wormtongue as the poison to Rohan, to infect Rohan. So which like I said, probably makes him the most important, just due to the fact that once he does what does he say? Or what does Gandalf say? Your hands would feel much better if they gripped your sword or something.
Yeah.
Well, he takes his sword and he, remembers who he is.
Yes.
He immediately goes into king mode. All right. What he grieves for his son. And then right after, he is into, what do we need to do? Do we need to go to Helm's Deep? Do we need to make Edoras our fortress? Do we need to meet up with Gondor? Like, they are making strategies and tactics and stuff. So I think without his help, and you also have to look at it, now that I'm thinking about it, who is one of the first people that, when Gandalf returns as Gandalf the White, who's one of the first people that he goes to for aid? He doesn't go to Gondor first. He goes to Rohan, because he knows that Theoden will hopefully be the biggest key to play in the victory. So, yeah, there's so much that you could analyze to be like, Theoden is one of the key components of this story.
He really is. And like, you have Aragorn trying to, like before, because Theoden King is like, he's like, I will not risk open war, and Aragorn's like, it's upon you whether you would risk it or not.
Yeah.
And so it's I can't imagine him not being a part of it. And it's my God, you're such a jarhead. The just gravitas that he brought to the role, and he never, at no point did you feel that he wasn't taking the role seriously, or wasn't it, like, he, at no point did he phone in a performance. Like, no one in the cast really did, but if you, like you said, if you had to look at one of them and be like, this is like a king, this is a documentary of a king that actually once existed, like, it's him. I love everything about his performance and about Rohan, and the fact that even when Gondor did not, like, he has his moment of sort of controlled rage, almost wrath, but not quite. And he's like, where was Gondor when the West Wall fell? Where was Gondor when all of this happened? And so Aragorn is really like, what if he says no? Like, what if he doesn't want to do this because, Gondor has essentially just left him floundering and allowed his borders to be attacked and his people to be attacked. So, like, what is going to happen? And that speaks to what a good, morally upright man Theoden was, because he didn't let that stop him.
Well, also that scene is really important as a leader. Like, I think, like, that scene should be probably shown in, maybe not, well, I mean, you could show it in film schools, but I think you could also show it in a professional setting, as to show leaders and managers and coaches and mentors how to effectively communicate. Because if you remember, they're on the ramparts, they're on the kind of the walls of Helm's Deep, and Aragorn is saying, Gondor will answer. Like, you have to call for aid. You have to, and like you said, with his rage, Theoden goes, where was Gondor when this happened? Where was Gondor? And he has to stop himself, because he remembers, he looks around and he has to go, I am their king. And if I start losing are we 10 minutes in this, 20 minutes? If I start losing my shit in front of my men who are already afraid, I cannot effectively be a good leader. And so he says something like, no, my lord Aragorn, Gondor will not be here, or something, but I forget the line. But and I think there are other moments within the film as well where Legolas and Aragorn are speaking to each other in the citadel, or in the armory, and everyone's getting ready, everyone's putting their armor on, and Legolas is like, these are plebs, dude. I know. These guys are old, or they're too young. They've seen too many sunsets, or too few, and we're all going to die.
Yep.
And he's just completely black-pilled. He's like, what are we doing here? Right? We're better than this. And Aragorn, as the leader, kind of has to shut him up in front of all these men. He goes, well, then I will die with them, So there are a lot of moments within the films for leaders to recognize their place as leaders, and better than anyone, Theoden did that immensely. I think his men, more than any other men, would follow him into the depth.
His man even says that, where he's like, he goes, your men, my king, would follow you anywhere, even into death. And you're just like, dude,
Well, because
right there.
And isn't that great though? Because Theoden himself is like, who am I, Glamdring?
Yeah.
Who, like, he is a broken man who has been poisoned. He has seen his son die. He is now riding to war. He is a king who is unsure of himself, who
Yep.
doubts himself constantly, and he
Mhm.
has to ask his right hand man, "Who the hell am I, and what am I doing?" And Glamdring just responds simply, "You are our king, sire." You know, it's like that's who he is. That is his mantle, and he's so much more than that, of course. But
Yes.
in that era and in Middle Earth, king has such a massive meaning,
Yes.
that to us we may not fully understand the extent to that, but no, it's a beautiful story told by a man who was a true like thespian, I feel like.
Yes.
So
definitely not an adult pretender.
no. No, not at all.
And it's just, it's heart-wrenching when you realize that it's like there's no more that he can do. Like, he's been called home. So it's just, you're just like, woo. You know, it really kind of stuff like this, because he portrayed, so like we saw Captain Smith go down with the Titanic, and we saw Theoden King die, of course, on Pelennor Fields, but these men were so, that he portrayed, they were so just incredible. They were absolute paragons of men. And so those characters forever seemed, you know, just like eternal. And it was like, oh, he's not going anywhere. Look at how strong he is. Look at how capable. Look at how wonderful he is. And just incredible and strong. And then, you know, he passes away and you're just like, oh, not quite immortal.
I wanted to show this real quick because I thought no better time.
Absolutely.
But Weta actually released this a week ago, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And I'm so glad that they did, because I can't find the actual date when it was released.
Well, it's sold out, so.
but it's sold out, and it's limited to only 900 pieces. So it was, and Weta does this thing where once a piece is released, it is never created again. So once it's molded and sculpted, and they produce it and they make the 900 limited pieces, it's never made again. So there will only always ever be 900. But what better depiction, what better sculpture, because they could have gone with a lot of different Theodens. Like, they could have gone with him at Helm's Deep, they could have gone with him at Pelennor Fields, and they ended up doing that with the Rite of the Rohirrim. But I am just thrilled with this piece and just how beautiful it looks. So if you guys got your hands on this, amazing. If not, we can at least recognize how beautiful it is. But yeah, this is a very, very special piece, and now means even more to people. Because of his passing. But yeah.
And people, this is, I think, one of the biggest issues that like that we sort of face is, I know that when stuff like that, everybody gives like Az or Gary or you or even I, like, you know, it's just like, oh, don't you have responsibilities? Like, don't you have better things to spend your money on? Why do you need these trinkets? Why do you need this junk? Like, it's not going to do anything. But it's legitimately like what pop culture can and does do. I mean, we're witnesses of it, that it affects so much, and there's so many people who it just speaks to you on a level that transcends all of the petty things, that all of anything that would separate us, whether it be creed, color, sex, location, whatever it might be that separates us. Great storytelling, great stories, and great men who can portray those stories, write those stories, and portray those stories. They transcend all of those things, and they really encompass like the human experience and what it means to be human, and for us to have that experience, whether it be, you know, hope, empathy, sadness, joy, fear, whatever those things may be. I think that is something that the books, especially the movies, portrayed it well, but very, very well. The books, like, they captured that true essence of those things that link us as human beings, that it's a soul to soul kind of connection. And that's the kind of storytelling that changes the world. And so when you have a man who can bring that story to life and truly portray what everybody, like, can embody what people are thinking and feeling and reading, and he can bring life to that, you can't help but feel a sense of gratitude and awe.
Absolutely. And I was actually going to say, I wrote something super similar to kind of what you're speaking on. I was going to ask if it's all right if I read it real quick, because I put this on Twitter a little earlier, and I think it resonates with people. But I basically said, the recent passing of actor Bernard Hill has really prompted me to consider the profound impact of storytelling on our culture. Characters like Theoden embodying honor, duty, nobility, courage. I think someone in the chat, Boosh, I think you said, what was it? Valor. I love that word. Valor, sacrifice, right? Like all these characteristics in the face of overwhelming adversity transcend their fictional realm, transcend Middle Earth. They become part of our collective consciousness, offering ideals that resonate even in a cynical world. I kind of put the caveat where I said, however, sadly, a character of this caliber could not be created in today's world by ideologues and activists, and simply could not exist in what we would call, quote unquote, modernity. J.R.R. Tolkien's writing and Peter Jackson's vision combined to create awe-inspiring narratives that celebrate heroism, which is exactly what Theoden was. And Bernard Hill's masterful performance perfectly captured the essence of Theoden, a flawed but ultimately noble leader. He serves as a powerful reminder that storytelling is not merely entertainment, but compelling narratives that explore universal themes. And that's the thing, universal themes, have the power to inspire and shape all of us, no matter what, like you said, Lady G, no matter what gender, no matter what sexual orientation, no matter what height, no matter what skin color, no matter what any of that, nonsense. These films and these characters have the power to inspire and shape all of us. Perhaps by cherishing and creating characters like King Theoden, we can rekindle the values of honor, courage, and commitment, not just in fiction, but in our own lives. So that was just something that I put out a little bit earlier on the old Twit Twats.
Oh, that was wonderful. Well said, well written, well spoken.
Thank you so much. No, like I said, I think Theoden means a lot to all of us, and I think that he deserves our articulate, well-spoken, response to his death, in order to honor his legacy, because that's what he's created. Really, is a legacy.
Yes.
Like this dude and these films and his performances will forever be known, more than anything, more than a lot of other people that are screaming and yelling on Twitter or whatever. Like by Theoden's performance, by Bernard's performance, we will always see Theoden, but we'll also recognize Bernard behind the mask or whatnot. So
absolutely. So we're at 32 minutes into this bad boy. We've only got about 30 minutes left. So really quick, hello chat, Miss Martin Muses, what's going on? Oh look, there you are, Max. Subhuman, it's great to see you. Charlie, Philadel, Boosh, what's up? And the Gilk Man was here. Hello for the $20. Thank you so much for being so generous. Much love. Keep being amazing. Thank you, Gilky. You too. Hail the victorious dead. Yes, hail the victorious
Cheers.
dead. I was in line to meet Bernard Hill a few years ago at Con. Sadly, he canceled last minute because he was sick. Oh, no. That's devastating. I'm so sorry.
Dang.
I'm
sorry, Thomas.
That sucks. I'm so sorry. I know Lance had to leave. So if you guys don't know Outcast Creative, that is headed up by Lance Lee. It's going on, my good sir. He has done so much work in film and television, like theater. He's a great guy. If you guys don't, you should really follow Outcast Creative. He's a good guy. Hey, Lady G, Bernard was once attached to do one of my films, so I had the honor of having him read my work and committing to the film. Sadly, I never got to work with him. That is unfortunate. But I'm glad you got to meet him and that he agreed. Yeah, he's just one of those. I can imagine that he is just one of those men that when you're in the room, he doesn't need to draw attention to himself. He's just sort of like people just get pulled to him. I feel like he is that type of man, and he's just the kind you want to just wrap up in a big bear hug.
Yeah, he sure does feel like someone who commands the stage or commands the screen. Like his presence demands that you pay attention to him, not out of ego, but of sheer like necessity of like this man needs to be listened to. Like he has commanded me to listen to his words, hear how he speaks. Just being near him, you're probably like, wow, he has a lot of history. Wasn't he one of the ones who came out against the whole Rings of Power nonsense where he was like, why are we making this?
He was very vocal about it. He was like the film, like they're made like that. He goes, I don't understand what is happening. He said it doesn't seem to be attached to Tolkien's work or Jackson's work at all.
Right.
And I was like, how correct you are. D-Day Direwolf, you've been a member for 18 months, my good sir. Thank you so much. Heads up, guys. The members-only book club will be starting back up very soon. And I will have a members-only live stream shortly and kind of just clue you guys in on what's been going on the last couple of years. But because this is such a fantastic member chat, I feel it's only fair that we give the king the stage. Oh, I just love it. I love it so much. Like,
love it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the member chat, D-Day. It means the world. Yes, like we're never gonna get. Just every line was perfect. I'm about to go watch the trailer.
I know.
So we get a duet instead, but
no, it's one like I watch it. I watch The Lord of the Rings every year around Christmas, but then there will be like random nights where I'm like home where I'm just like, I'll turn it on again. I'll watch it again like the 300th time.
I'm like, oh, I have all this stuff to do. I have all this stuff to do. I need to do that. I've got all this stuff that I have to watch for like research and for like recording and for videos. But also Two Towers is already in the drive and all I have to do is push play. You know what?
Yep.
I'll just watch like the first 20 minutes and then 2.5 hours later, I'm like, well, Return of the King it is. But it's just, it's truly one of those gifts that I don't think we like take it for granted, but honestly, everybody was like comparing Game of Thrones to Lord of the Rings when it first came out. And I never got into A Song of Ice and Fire. I never got into Game of Thrones. Hubby is a huge fan.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it never like struck a chord with me.
Yeah, me neither.
And so it was never really my thing. And then I would see like clips. People would be like, "Oh my gosh, this is just such an epic speech. Oh my gosh, listen to Jon Snow. Listen to," it's his name, right? Jon Snow. See, I can't.
Yeah, I think that was one of the characters. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the little dwarf guy, Lannister.
Tyrion Lannister.
Tyrion T. Lannister. We'll just go with that. He had a lot of like speeches or quips or lines that I would see all over the place for a while. But none of them like hit the way that like Theoden King did. None of them, even when it's just Gandalf and Pippin standing on the parapet in Gondor, like and Pippin's like, it's so quiet. And so like, it's just the two of them standing there having a conversation. And then you have Pippin, and just a little bit later, it's Pippin and Gandalf again. And Pippin's like, I didn't think it would end this way. And he's like, end? No. And then like, there's just the stories and the films, while the films are not perfect, I think it is as close to perfect cinema as we will ever see. And I think it is as close to a perfect adaptation that we will ever see.
Yes, I agree. I think it is by far the best trilogy ever. I think it is the best film franchise ever.
Absolutely.
I think that they will be held, at least for me, they're my favorite films ever.
Yes.
And to this day, nothing has touched them.
No.
Like, not just like, there's like a difference between, this film or TV show, it got pretty close. Like, I'm not even saying there have been films that I've watched since The Lord of the Rings that aren't even in the same category. Like, I don't even consider them because, and they're still some of my favorite films of all time, right?
Yep.
I think the only epics that I would say are probably up there with Lord of the Rings for me are like Gladiator, right?
Yes.
Master and Commander.
These are Braveheart.
Yep.
I would but even Apocalypto, I wouldn't put that high. Apocalypto was great, but because someone said, they were like, well, Apocalypto has like this and this, and it's historic. It has like historical grounding, and so like you have to take all those things into consideration. And I'm like, yeah, but no, just like it's not, especially when you're putting it up against, and everybody's like, well, Mel Gibson did Apocalypto too, and I said, I get that, but it's not Braveheart, it's not Gladiator, it's not it's not Master and Commander, it's not The Patriot. It's, there's something about the Lord of the Rings. Like whenever I see people do like those movie rating scales, so it's like S tier.
Oh yeah. The rank list or whatever.
Rank lists, I'm just like, there isn't a category high enough for Lord of the Rings. It literally just sits above everything, and the reason that that's so great is that like it's not doing it. Peter Jackson is super humble about it, and the cast is normally super humble about it. Like it's not this like prideful lording over all of these other epics, all of these other stories, all of these other franchises, films, and adaptations, but solely because of its purity and just, this is going to sound lame, but like goodness. And I don't mean like the film is good. Like that's not what I'm saying. Yes, they are, but like there is that thread. Yes.
It's virtuous. Yeah.
Yes. Like it's thread through the entire thing, and it's consistent. And you don't see that. Like I can't think of a film, or let alone a trilogy, before or since, definitely not since, that has been able to incorporate that thread of virtue and and incredible storytelling and faithfulness in such a way.
I would agree. And, you know, even when you look at Star Wars now and you look at the panels that they have for Star Wars Celebration, and everything has to be an allegory. Like everything has to be, you know, you get that woman who's like, oh, Star Wars has always been patriarchal, so now we're going to do it like our way. And it's like, oh, it's for women now. Strong women. And you never, at least I've never seen it, but I've never seen or heard any of the actors of Lord of the Rings on a stupid panel that's like, you know, Lord of the Rings really speaks to January 6th and, you know, the scouring of the Shire and the scouring of of Rohan really speaks to Trump supporters really burning down our like none of that bullshit.
Nothing
like they don't
that.
they don't do that. And I think they realize that the Lord of the Rings is bigger than that.
Yes.
And that it's not theirs to begin to apply modern day ideologies to, even though they may, like, I'm sure there are some actors who do not have our same, you know, thoughts and whatnot. Yeah. But they don't say it because it has no meaning. It has no bearing within the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. It's not theirs to recognize that one, if they and I think that became even more apparent because with Rings of Power, like it was so full of itself and it was so it was, and the fact that
it's up its own ass. Like everyone was so like, oh, we're just so amazing. Yeah.
We're incredible. This is the most expensive television show ever created. This is going to show how strong Galadriel actually is, and she's going to command the armies and the scouts, and she's going to fight Sauron. And like, it's wild because when you talk about that scene specifically at the end where it's Sauron is tempting her to go with him and join him and become his queen, it completely undermines the scene in Lothlorien with the mirror and when Frodo offers her the ring, because she already said no to Sauron, which is the source of the ring's like the source of the ring is Sauron. So if she can say no to the source, the ring shouldn't be any temptation to her at all. And the whole reason that, for spoilers, I guess, that she had not gone back after the kinslaying, which they sort of just breeze over in, they're like, oh, yes, we had a disagreement, so the Noldor left. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Like, you committed like almost genocide on these people. So in the kinslaying, yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, listen, I know Galadriel didn't actually participate in the kinslaying, but the Noldor definitely didn't just leave.
They didn't just sit back.
Like, you were just like, we had a disagreement, so we left. And I'm like, whoa. That's a bit of an understatement. And so, like, you're running into these modern writers who think they're smarter than Tolkien, which they are not.
No.
And they think that, because if you ever listen to these people, my story is worth telling and everybody needs to listen to it because it's worth hearing.
Yeah.
And at no point do they ever consider that they may be able to create characters that are, or a world that's bigger than them. Like, at no point do they think beyond themselves. At no point. So, and that is where you run into their characters being soulless, lifeless, unrelatable, selfish entities that are no more than words on a page. And they're like, how come my stuff isn't getting made into multi-million-dollar films? How come my stuff's not being, like, my stuff is good? Like, no, because it's a bunch of self-insert drivel, but also you have not given these characters any agency, which is hilarious because that's all they talk about is, let's give the women need agency. They need agency, but they refuse to give it to the characters that they write, whether it be for film, theater, or a novel, or a story, or a book. there is no life breathed into their characters, and so they're always going to fall flat. They're always going to be unrelatable because these so-called writers don't know how to write outside of themselves.
It's classic narcissism. And what I think happens is, like, you look at the Lord of the Rings franchise, the trilogy, and each one of those films has an overarching theme of sacrifice.
Yes.
Sam sacrificing himself for Frodo. Frodo's sacrificing himself for the good of Middle Earth. Aragorn and all of the Fellowship sacrificing their livelihood for the sake of the mission, which is Frodo. All, like, the whole theme of those three films is sacrifice, duty, virtue, nobility, honor, discipline, like all of these things that are just good, but then and are all traditional values. But then you look at Rings of Power, and there is zero sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
And there are zero themes of sacrifice. There are zero themes of duty or honor, nobility. It's all, there's a tempest in me. I'm the center of the stage.
She literally left one of her men in the snow. Like, like.
She's like, but then when you see her in the Lord of the Rings films, and Galadriel is speaking to Frodo when the Fellowship is all there, and she's like kind of looking at him, and she's speaking to him telepathically, and she's saying, like, the ring has fallen to you, and if you don't do this, no one will. Like, it's such a. She is humbly telling him, you are now the bearer of our world, right?
Yep.
But the Rings of Power Galadriel would be like, give me that ring. I'll do it myself. It's just like, oh my God.
Literally would have pulled a Thanos and been like, fine, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Like,
for real.
And I am getting incredibly tired of misunderstood villains, misunderstood enemies. Like, oh, well, she's only doing this because patriarchy. She's only this way because a man hurt her. Or she's only this way because she struggled for so long until she finally realized that everybody else was taking it off the top too, so why not her? And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, those are not justifiable reasons to, I don't know, kill a bunch of people. Like, honestly, John Wick has more morals than you. He slaughtered a bunch of people because of a puppy. Like, oh well, that's like by a court of law, that's pretty justifiable. That is justifiable, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. I just, it blows my mind that people think that, like, Wanda is a
sympathetic villain,
or like a misunderstood heroine. She's actually a heroine. She's just, she's going through a tragedy right now. Like, every hero has a doubt. Okay, but every hero doesn't enslave an entire town and torture them for weeks on end. Like, I'm just blown away. And the fact that they want to call modern Captain Marvel a heroine when the first thing she does is assault a guy for calling her pretty. Like, I'm just like, what has happened? Like, where did we go so very wrong in storytelling? And I'm sorry, I love unapologetic villains. I think they are so much more because they own who they are. They're not making excuses. They aren't trying to deny what they've done.
Right. Or like, they think that what they are doing is justified. They think that, like, you look at Magneto, and the reason why people love Magneto as a villain is because he truly believes that he's the good guy. Mm-hmm. Like, he is fully on this warpath.
Yep.
And nothing will stop him. But it is because he thinks that what he's doing is justified, and that he is a virtuous leader of this new generation.
Yep.
And that's what's scary about him. because he doesn't feel remorse. He doesn't feel guilt. He doesn't feel any of that. He just feels like, yep, this is my calling. This is my duty. And I'm going to do it, and that's like, oh my God, that's frightening.
And the crazy, like, the fact that he went through the concentration camps and that he saw the evils done to the Jews, and the fact that instead of, at no point has he ever thought or like concerned himself with, am I doing the same thing that was done to me? Am I as evil as Hitler, who, separated me from my parents, who murdered my family, who did these horrible things to me and to my people? And then, like, at no point does he have that doubt ever. He's a purist on his mission. Like, he never once correlates himself to that. And instead, like, I think it's X-Men First Class. I'm trying to think of, because I don't think most people have read the X-Men comics. I'm just going to go on a limb there. But I know a lot of people saw First Class. And when Michael Fassbender's Magneto is like, I've been at the mercy of men just following orders, I was like, oof. I totally get where he's coming from. It makes complete sense. But we're going to wrap up soon, and we haven't talked about 40K at all. But still a great discussion.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But okay, so Psychotic Mongoose, thank you so much for the gifted membership. I think it went to Soul Assassin. So thank you very much. Soul Assassin, welcome to the membership. But yes, I agree. Greatest villains are the ones who believe what they're doing is right. And of course, he's talking about morally right, not politically right, which apparently it died very quickly, but people were like, we hate that, we don't say the correct thing to do. Like, what's the right thing to do? Like, that's confusing for people. Do you mean politically right, or do you mean like morally right? And I said, no, you're just upset that it's not the left thing to do. Like, go away, you psychopaths.
Right.
But 40K is something that also has an unapologetic, like, you can't call the Emperor anything, but he's honestly, he's just like Magneto. He's completely committed to this cause. Like, he sacrificed himself to go in and fight chaos. But a bunch of people have to die so that he doesn't become untethered. So, like, so is the Emperor a hero or a villain for you, Max?
That's a tough question. I think so there's a book that I am probably halfway through now called it's called Valdor, Birth of the Imperium. And you get a really interesting look at the Emperor, and through Constantine Valdor's eyes, you almost see the Emperor as just a man of science, and that he is just trying to preserve the human race, but he also makes a lot of mistakes, and he does a lot of really corrupt things along the way. And so I think he's a broken man. I don't know if I'd necessarily say that he's a hero or a villain. I think that he's a bad dad.
Yeah.
He's a bad dad to his sons, his Primarchs, and his golden boys, his custodians. But I don't know. Yeah, I wish I knew more about the Emperor. Like, I wish I probably need to read the rest of the book to fully give you a concise answer to say, I believe he's a hero or I believe he's a villain. But the one thing that I can say is I think that he is just a broken man, but I think that he's also a bad dad, jokingly. But if I'm a Black Templar, I would say that he's the god of mankind, the god emperor of mankind, and that we shall serve him to the end of our days. So that's my Black Templar take. But yeah.
As a Grey Knight, I would say that, never fall to chaos.
Yes, of course.
As the emperor himself battles it in all forms. Like, I find it fascinating because I was a big Black Templar fan until I found the Grey Knights. Shocking, I know. But the fact that the Grey Knights are the only ones that have not had a member fall to chaos, that's one of the things that I'm just like, whoo, talk about, because like the Black Templars were so devoted and so what is the word I'm thinking of? Like,
oh, sorry. I think you cut out real quick.
Yeah, sorry guys, my mic has a short in it. I apologize. But cool. the Black Templars, like, just they're zealous for the Emperor and for the cause and what they're willing to do. It's just astonishing. And then you get to like the Grey Knights, and of course, you know, everybody loves, like, if Mike was on here, he'd be cheering for the Space Wolves. But that's neither here nor there.
Wait, Epic Mike?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that he's a 40K guy.
Yeah.
Oh, so he's a furry. All right, that's fair.
Yeah.
I like Space Wolves. I actually really like them.
I do too.
I think their characters and their lore, they actually have a ton of, like.
Oh yeah.
It's tough to, like, the Black Templars have like High Marshal Helbrecht. They have the Sword Brethren. They have the Emperor's Champion, the Sword Brethren. They have who's the other guy? Sigismund. Like, they have a few characters, but like once you get into Space Wolves, like, you're talking like I think his name is Njal the Stormcaster. You have Ragnar Blackmane. You have Arjak Rockfist. You have Logan Grimnar. You have you have so many characters that are Crom Dragon Gaze, I believe his name is. Like, the characters within the Space Wolves are pretty dope, and I like the fact that they have a lot of lore associated with them as well.
Yes, and I love lore. It was a lot of fun for me to just watch you. Very few times has there ever been someone. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say the live stream that I did like 2 weeks ago when we were talking Custodes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great, and
it's
thank you for your support, because that was a great stream. I enjoyed doing that.
Me too. One of these days I'll come on with you and I'll actually give the guys crap live instead of just from the chat. Poor Drew. He probably thinks I'm psychotic.
Oh, no, he loves it.
But yeah, I'm just I wish there was just a, like, I don't know. 40K. And so, okay, so for everybody that doesn't know, this stream was actually supposed to be a 40K stream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I talked about this like Wednesday or Thursday, but obviously Bernard Hill passed, and we have to show some love to our Theoden King. But what I was gonna do, and what we might still have to do someday, Max, is like I would like maybe either like paint or play the game, or even have like one of my novels. I've got codexes, I've got novels, I have much 40K stuff. It's kind of unhealthy. But
it's always healthy. Don't let anyone tell you different. Yeah,
like
it's
my Lord of the Rings, like, I have my book collection. I could probably fill Beauty and the Beast's library like 5 times over. I'm not even kidding. I have a problem. And unfortunately, I don't have that many bookcases, so I have to like rotate stuff. But
oh gosh.
No, I was just, when everybody, they'll be like, "What's the easiest way to get into it?" And I'm like, God, guys, like, what are you a bigger fan of? Like, are you a fan of tabletop? Are you a fan of miniatures? Are you a fan of like, do you enjoy assembling things and painting things? Like, are you one of those detail people? Do you like reading stories? Do you like reading, or do you enjoy reading more like sort of like a historical and scientific layout, like a codex would be? Are you more of a strategist who want to read one of those? Do you want to watch the fan films? Do you want to watch, there's the playthroughs, the video games? Do you want to do, like, there's so many ways into this hobby, and they have been around for so long before I was born even. And so I think I think one of the hardest things for me and I've said this before, and I'm not blaming him, obviously. Like, it is not his fault. But I think that if Henry Cavill had never admitted his love for 40K, we would not be dealing with the influx of fandom tourists that we're currently dealing with. Like,
I would agree. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with Henry expressing his admiration for the universe, for the hobby.
yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with him wanting to create something for the hobby. But we are living in a time where you have these vultures within fandom and within hobbies, and you have tourists and these they're leeches, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And they're going to want to attach themselves to the most popular thing, not because they like it, not because they're interested in it, not because they want to share it with other people, but simply because they want to take away something that we have that they feel is not including them. When that's not the case, when it's always been very inclusive of everyone.
Yes.
So they feel that they have this like necessary purpose to say, well, I don't like that thing because it's, inherently this or that. And so we need to change it for my perspective. And Games Workshop and all these other places go like, oh, well, maybe are we being inclusive enough? Maybe we should change it a little bit, for this audience. And it's that classic meme that you see that by the time Games Workshop has changed the hobby and Warhammer is not what it used to be, those people who were like, oh, you need to change it, Games Workshop is going to go to them and say like, hey, do you want this thing? We made this different for you. And they're going to go, we never really liked it in the first place. It's the same thing with what happened with comics. Like Marvel got huge, the comics suffered, and now the comic book audience has dwindled and have moved on to other things.
Yep.
And so the comic book realm and the industry is going like, hey, I thought you guys wanted this stuff. Don't you want it? And all these weirdos and activists and ideologues and tourists are going like, we never really liked comics anyway, so whatever.
Yeah, they're like, no, I always thought that stuff was childish. Like, I was just trying.
Yeah.
And then you get the ones who are like, we were just trying to help you be more mature so you could have a more mature audience. We didn't say we were that mature audience. We were just trying to help you find that mature audience.
Yeah.
And you're like, listen, if I want to come home after a long day of either dealing with other people's children, trying to teach them arithmetic, reading, and writing, or, when I was active duty, if I just want to get back to my barracks, sit down, and paint a little model so that I can be totally focused on this one thing and shut the outside world out for an hour or two, then let me do it. Like, I don't understand. Disney has this thing called the potato bag protocol where they take pretty women and uglify them. And these fandoms have a joy-sucking freaking protocol where it's like, why are you happy with this thing that doesn't... It just proves how short-sighted and racist and small-sighted and sexist they actually are, because they're like, that thing doesn't look anything like you. It doesn't share your same, identity. It doesn't look like you. It doesn't sound like you. It's not from where you're from. It's not a woman. It's not empowering women. Like, how can you like this thing when it doesn't have any part of you in it? And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, because for stuff like when you look at like the Black Templars, the Grey Knights, the Space Wolves, when you look at them, they have done horrible things. Like, chat, don't get it twisted. Like, I'm well aware of the heinous acts that have been committed. Yep. But when you look at they're just like zealous for the cause and their love for the Emperor and their innate sense of duty to protect humanity overall.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that is everybody could aspire to. Should we go about it the same way? No. But they are definitely, there are things you can look at and you can be like, we should, like, this is a good warning for like humanity in general.
Yeah, I think there are aspects of Warhammer 40K that people can take and think like, well, that's pretty cool, or that there's some value to this, right? Because you look at, like you said, there is a lot of there is a duty by by a lot of the Imperium of Man to their brothers, to their sisters, brothers and sisters at arms, to fight for the good of humanity, and that someday, hopefully, that they will be able to survive against the immeasurable odds that are against them, right?
Yes.
And I think more than anything, I think there are two main war gamers like within the cultural space of Warhammer, because like I'd say like a good 80% of war gamers within the Warhammer space probably just play the game or paint the models, and they don't look at anything in terms of like the culture war.
Yeah.
But with the culture war gamers, I would say that there are probably two that see the game differently. There's one that probably sees the Imperium of Man as a as like the insatiable will to stand against all odds to be able to survive and to try and continue humanity.
Yes.
That's like one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, oh, it's a satire of like fascist, communist, Nazi regimes, and it's just a big joke, and like Warhammer doesn't actually mean anything. It's not like interesting, or like, it's stupid and it's for babies or whatever. And that's of course the other side of it. But
yeah,
I though I don't think like, and that other side will also say that there are no heroes within the Imperium, which I disagree with.
Disagree.
Because I think that even though there are heinous, awful, disgusting, and despicable things that are done within the Imperium,
yes,
I think that there are few men that exhibit characteristics of heroes, like what we talked about with King Theoden: sacrifice, duty. Yep. I feel that they uphold a matter of courage and strength, to, like I said, fight against insurmountable odds. So I think there are characteristics of heroes within a lot of these characters, but a lot of them are flawed.
Very
and that's
much
fine. So, but I love what Manowar says, because I agree that I think GW is trying to make this mainstream.
Yes.
And God forbid that once your hobby hits mainstream, it's dead. It is just dead, and it will not come back from that.
Hollowed out and sold for parts. Literally,
Yeah.
it's like going into the black market for organ cells. They sell the heart, then they sell a lung, the liver, and then like all you're left with at the end is like maybe a brain stem and a couple of phalanges and a meat suit, and that's all you're left with.
Blech.
Like it's so true, and I think part of the reason that, like, because Lord of the Rings, like, there's a Lord of the Rings Monopoly, there's a Lord of the Rings board game. There's one of my favorite games to this day is the PS2 version of the Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. I love that game.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, for PS2.
Yeah, it's still to this day one of my favorite video games ever. And so you had Lord of the Rings still to this. You just showed the Theoden King statuette, the 1/6 scale. Like these things are still being made, but it didn't go mainstream the way the rest of this went mainstream.
Yeah, and that's a good point.
I can't fathom why, outside of it just being a much more superior work to everything else, because and when you look at Tolkien himself, the love and the dedication that he poured into this story, and just the imagination and the the men that he wrote about. Like, it's, I cannot to this day, I cannot figure out why it didn't go mainstream the way that everything else did. What I do know is that, like, when Rings of Power was first announced, there wasn't this overwhelming sense of like, oh, this is so exciting, like we can't wait, more Lord of the Rings, this is going to be so good. People were like, hey, like, this is, you have huge shoes to fill. You are going to have to make this incredible. And if you don't, we're going to let you know. And of course, that's when we got all of the articles and all the stuff like, oh, racism, fascism, all of the other stuff.
Isms.
Yeah. All the isms and the phobes.
Yeah.
And people were like, no, we know that that's not what this is. So, like, the Lord of the Rings true, like, Tolkien fandom, they were like, no, we know who we are, we know what we are, and we know what Lord of the Rings is, and it's not what you're trying to tell us. And we aren't who you're trying to say we are. And so I really do. That comes down to just, like, the power of the fandom. The fandom isn't here for, like, greed or notoriety or, like, you know, it's, do we want everyone else to have Lord of the Rings? Absolutely. But, like, if you want Lord of the Rings, you're going to have to love it as it is, because it's not changing for you. And that's just,
no, that's a great point. I think that's such a good question though, Lady G, because to ask, because when you look at it and, you know, you say, okay, Star Wars has like a Star Wars celebration. You have the May the 4th be with you. You have an entire Disneyland exhibit just for Star Wars. You have like all this stuff. You have, like, you know, everyone dresses up as Star Wars characters. You see lightsabers at conventions. All of this Star Warsy mainstream stuff. One, I wonder if, and chat, you guys can let me know, and Lady G, you can let me know if I'm off here or not. But I wonder if it's because Star Wars may be easier, it's more palatable. It's easier to just, like, Jedis with laser swords, cool. Like, I get that, right? Whereas Lord of the Rings, it's like, there's lore, there's history, there's legacy, there's like all these different factions and races, and like Star Wars, yeah, it has aliens, but for the most part, you're centered around like the main story. Lord of the Rings, I feel like it takes a very dedicated type of hobbyist or a dedicated type of lore historical buff to really, like, get into it. So I don't think it's as mainstream that way. And I also think that because it was just, here are the books, that's it. Whereas Star Wars was like, here's these films, and then these films, and then this story, and then this comic book, and then these things, and like,
here's this animated, here's this animated series,
like,
and,
there's more and more and more.
And the EU, like, you'll get a lot of EU guys and, like, Lucas loyalists who be like, no, but, and it goes, you go, yeah, you have all of this stuff, but it still centers like Vader and Luke and all of this stuff. Like, that is a pinnacle point in Star Wars, no matter what. Whereas when you go to the Lord of the Rings, like, you have you know, the age before the trees, or the age of trees, and you've got you know, the first age, second age, third age, fourth age. Like, you're going through all of these things, and everything follows this very coherent, consistent timeline and storyline. And I mean, we're witnessing it now, where Warhammer has gone back to, there've always been female custodians. No, there haven't. Bitch, come here, let me hit you. Like, they're legit. I have a codex. My uncle got it for me. He had bought it originally, and I think it's from like 1984.
Oh, cool.
And
yeah,
like,
one of the first ones.
Yeah, one of the very first ones, like 1984, 1985. There's no female custodies. Like, I'm just gonna tell you, spoilers. they're not there. And so it's, and also, I promise I'll get off my soapbox after this. The thing that made like Éowyn great, she did not need to usurp a man or belittle a man or anything like that to be herself. And she wanted to be there with her brother and her uncle, and she wanted to be there for her people. And like, why can't I fight? Like, she didn't understand it. And then she saw the horrors of war and she was like, oh, this is why. And then of course, you know, when she's facing down the Witch King, and he's like, no living man can kill me. He got taken out. Everybody overlooks Mary. Mary took him out with his blade. And so like wounded him, and then Éowyn was able to get the kill shot in. And so that wasn't Tolkien being like, oh, you know, what he's saying is that like, when the time comes, if you are the one that needs to step up and be the hero, you'll know, and you can do this. It wasn't him being like, girl power, like that. It wasn't that at all.
I don't know what you're talking about, Lady G, because on Twitter, I have anons on Twitter telling me that if Lord of the Rings came out today in 2024, that all of us chuds would be spurging in our comment sections going, oh my God, she's a Mary Sue. I can't believe that she killed the Witch King. When, like you said, that's not the case at all. So
not the case at all. And it's straight from the books. And like, that's why when Games Workshop throwing it, like, it just feels like it really, the other thing is it feels like an afterthought, because it is an afterthought where there's always been female custodians, and you're like, no, there hasn't. And to suggest such is an insult to the actual female fans that you do have. And it's an insult to any future female fans you will have, because you're saying that what we had, you know, the Sisters of Battle, like, oh, that's not good enough. That's not enough. You weren't enough. So we're going to, out of our gracious hearts, we're going to bestow upon you this change to our lore that absolutely fucks everything up. Like, no, get out of here with that. But on that note, would you like to say a few words to the people? Where can they find you? What are you up to?
Oh, sure. Well, I was going to ask before I leave, chat, you guys can respond to this. And Lady G, I'd love to hear your answer. But I was going to say, what is your favorite scene of King Theoden in the two?
Get out of your mind.
It's tough. I think for me, it's definitely the speech at Pelennor Fields right before the Rite of the Rohirrim. I think in particular, he says, forth and fear no darkness. And that is just speaks to all the themes in the Lord of the Rings. It's light versus dark, good versus evil, and to have the courage to fight against that when you need to, when it's time to sacrifice and serve for the greater good. Or not the greater good, but for the good of Middle Earth. So I love that scene. It brings tears to my eyes every time. And so hail to the victorious dead. Hail to King Theoden. But yeah, you guys can find me at Maxfield Von Priestley on YouTube, and then you guys can also find me at Maximus Prime 40K, which is just a fun little hobby project, which is like a Warhammer channel that I do on the side. But yeah, you got. Oh, and then for Twitter, it's just Max Priestley. So yeah,
he's a simple man.
Yeah, even though my name is not as simple, Maxfield Von Priestley is a long Duke Maxfield Von Priestley III.
You can't dukedom yourself. That's not how it works.
How about Lord? Well, I was a captain, so Captain Maxfield Von Priestley III.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
You could do that. If only you made it to general. Just kidding.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to say
so many politics the higher you get up in rank.
Yeah.
Even as an E5, you saw it, and I saw it, and I was just like, oh, this is nasty. I hate politics.
Just gets messy.
It really does. But thank you to the chat. You're beautiful. Thank you, Thomas, for the $20 super chat, and Psychotic Mongoose for the membership gift to Soul Assassin. I know he appreciates it. And I would also really like to thank, I know he's not here anymore, but D-Day Direwolf for the 18-month membership chat. That was huge. Thank you so much. So like I said before, we're going to be doing a members only live stream very soon, and book club live streams will be coming back. Oh, look at Max being all fancy. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I can convince Max to do more streams with me, because he's kind of a fun guy. He's got some good points.
Oh, well, thank you. Every now and then.
Now and then. But I think we should probably maybe try and do something fun like that. But on that note, gonna go ahead and I'm gonna have, if you're not catching this live, you're not gonna get to see the scenes that I showed at the beginning or the scenes at the end, because I'm gonna get hit for them. But nonetheless, we're gonna go out on two great speeches from Theoden King himself. So chat, much love to you all. God bless, Godspeed. Thank you so much for being here, and we will talk to y'all later. Bye.
I go to my fathers, in whose mighty company I shall not now feel ashamed.